Hello, my name is Chris and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be solving Leetcode problem number 11, container with most water. This is considered a medium problem. Excuse me. So it says you are given an integer array height of length n. There are n vertical lines drawn such that the two endpoints of the ith line are I 0 and I height I. Find two lines that together with the x-axis form a container such that the container contains the most water. Return the maximum amount of water a container can store. Notice that you may not slant the container. Okay, so here's example 1. Listed all these heights here, right? And it's represented by this graph. And the output is going to be 49. Explanation: the above vertical lines that are represented by array, that in this case the max area of water, blue section, the container can contain is 49. Excuse me. Okay, so what are we doing here? So basically you got, this is spanning 7 rows here, right? And then in between these, this and that, this one spans, spans 8 rows and this spans 7 rows, right? So basically we need to, for each of these gaps, we're adding 7, right? So 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. That gives us our result of 49, right? So you can kind of like check, like, oh, maybe this would be the answer here to there. Well, that would be 8. So that would be 8, 16, 24, 32, 40. So 49, right? 49 is bigger than 40. So basically what we need to do is we need to check here to here, right? Here to here, 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 right? And then we need to check here to here, then here to here, so on and so forth. So you're basically checking all combinations of these heights to find which is going to give you the greatest amount of water, or the greatest number, okay? So how do we do this? So let's start. We're going to use this variable here. I'm going to move over to CodePen. Oh, I forgot to delete the answer again. My bad. There we go. And we're going to clear this so we can have a clean slate. And I'm going to create my function. I'm just going to call it func. And then, whoops. For now, we're just going to return height. Make sure CodePen is working properly. Sometimes it locks up and gets a little buggy. Console.log, our initiation of func. Now we should see height in the console. Very good. Okay. So, like we said, like the one way we could do this is create a for loop and then a for loop inside a for loop, right? And then create a variable called like max water, and then start with max water 0, and then every time, and then go through the for loop. So we would start here with the outer loop, and the inner loop would start here, right? So you check 1 between 1 and 8, and then 1 and 6, and then 1 and 2, and then 1 and 5, all the way till you get to 1 and 7. And then it would store the max value in max water, and then it would come here and it would do the same thing, right? This would be the outer loop, and then the inner loop would go through all that. And as we know, having nested loops drastically slows your runtime, so it's a very slow approach to solving algorithms. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use the two-pointer approach, going to create a for loop, and we're going to set I to 0, and it's going to come this way. And then we're also going to create a variable called index, and we're going to set it to the index of 7 here, and then that's going to come in this way. That way we don't have that nested loop situation. At the very most, the loop will get to all the way to this index, but it'll probably, with most cases, stop way before that. Okay, so to start, we're going to create a variable. We're going to call it max water, and we're just going to set it to 0 for now. And so every time we check a pair of numbers, if the amount of water between them is greater than this max water variable, then we're going to change max water to that number, right? So it's at 0, so if we're checking right away 1 and 7, that's going to be the first check. You're going to have basically 1 for every one of these commas, or every one of these spaces. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right. So 8 is higher than 0, so we change max water to 8. We're also going to create a variable called index, and this is going to equal height dot length minus 1, right? Because what the index variable is representing is starting from the right side, whereas when we go in the for loop, we're going to set I to the left side. Of course, you say height dot length minus 1 because our length is, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But of course, our index is started at 0, so this is not 9, that's 8. So that's why we have that minus 1 there. Now we're going to create our for loop, and we're going to say let I equal 0. And if I is, whoop, my bad, forgot to put I there. If I is less than height dot length, then we increment I by 1, I plus plus. Cool. And so now, just to kind of make sure the loop's written and working correctly, we're just going to console.log, and we're going to say, we're going to check the index, and we're also going to check height, height at index I. Cool. So we have our indexes going up to 8, and then each corresponding number that goes with that index. Great. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called current water. And that's just going to say, basically, if you're going to be comparing two numbers here, right? And the current water, so if we're comparing this and that, right? This goes as a height of 1, this is a height of 7, right? What I mean by current water is the amount of water that's going to go in each of these gaps, right? So that's always going to be whatever number is lower, right? So in the case of this first check, 1 and 7, current water is going to be 1. So what we need to say here is, easy way to do that is let current water equal math.min, and then we'll be checking height at I and height at index. So now let's console log that, log current water. So we should see the lesser of the two numbers, right? In this case, we're always, because we're not changing index yet, this is always going to be index. We'll change that in a second here. But so right now we're just checking 1 and 7, 8 and 7, 6 and 7, 2 and 7, 5 and 7, so on and so forth. So if you notice, they're all, the min numbers are all the numbers at I, with the exception of these 8s, right? So we see that be 7, right? Because 7 is less than 8. Okay. So now we know our current water. And then what we want to do is we want to say if current water times index minus I is greater than max water, we're going to say max water equals this. Okay. And we'll go ahead and console.log max water. We'll talk about what this is doing now. Max water. Okay. Okay, and this is max water for every index, right? So what we're saying here is we got current water, right? So we'll start here. Current water is going to be 1, right? And then in order to find what the max water would be if we were using 1 and 7, you want to have that current water, which is 1, which is the amount of water in each one of these spaces here, right? And then you want it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times, right? So it's going to be 1 times 8. And how we get that 8 is we take the index, which is going to be, wait a minute, no, I'm confused myself. Which is going to be, right, okay, that makes sense. Index, which is going to be 8, and then we subtract it by I, which is 0. So it's going to be 1 times 8. So our max water is 8. Okay, so then we're going to come to, and then the last thing we're going to, and so basically, well, let me explain this first. And so then, you know, we go through the loop again. I increments to 8. And now we're checking 8 and 7, right? So we're saying current water is going to be 7. And then if current water times index minus 1 again. So now we have the index of 8 and 7. So we have 7. So 7 times 7 is 49. That's greater than max water, which is currently 8. So we change the max water from 8 to 49. And then as we go through the rest of these, right, none of these are going to have anything higher than 49, so it's just 49 the rest of the way. And then if we were to return that, that would be our answer. Now there's one more step we need to do, because obviously we're not just always trying to check all these numbers with the last index, right? Because that may not be the right solution. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put one more if statement, and we're going to say if. So we're going to use the pointer method to determine which side we're going to increment from, right? So we're going to say height at I. If that's greater than the height at index, what we want to do, so if this side is higher than that, right, we want to decrement this side by 1. Okay, So we want to say index minus minus. Okay. But that still is not correct, because what's going to happen, what we want to do, right, is we want to check 1 and 7. So we want to increment this side if it's less than this side, and we want to decrement this side if it's less than this side. So we check 1 and 7. This side is lower, so we start the for loop over again, and it increments up to the index of 1. Now we check 8 and 7. 8 is greater than 7, so now we want the index to come this way. But because we're going to go into another for loop, I is going to increment by 1, and we don't want that, because now what we want to do is check 8 and 3, not 6 and 3. Okay, so we also need to move I back by 1. Okay, now this is going to work for the most part. We're going to put it in there, and we're going to get a couple of errors, and once we get those errors, we'll talk about what's going on with them and how to fix that. But I just want you to see how this is working. So we're going to go ahead and run the code. Okay. And so for both of these test cases, we're good. All right, so let's submit. Oh, I was wrong. I thought there was an edge case I needed to take care of, but I don't. Fantastic, and that's a very fast algorithm. 1 millisecond beats 95.29%. All right, fantastic. All right, thank you for watching my video today. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please remember to like and subscribe to my channel. Enjoy your days.